We'll get to more of that reaction, some of the horrendous reaction there's been to the killing, but we don't know a motive yet necessarily, but we can suspect a lot of things behind the motive for this shooting. And we've also got indications from the FBI that there was ammunition engraved with expressions of anti-fascist or Antifa-style ideology and even transgender ideology on the rifle and on ammunition. This has echoes of that Minnesota case, the horrible shooting of those children at that mass a couple of weeks ago. Is this something that people need to be more concerned about? Is there an issue that the FBI is going to be looking at more broadly with Antifa, anti-fascist, and also the political side of the transgender ideology here?
Yeah, James, it's almost too early to say. You hate to sort of jump to conclusions. Look what the FBI did. Yes, right after the shooting, the FBI came out and said they had a suspect in custody, and of course, it turns out that they did not. So I'm always sort of reticent about moving 3 moves down the chessboard. I think it's fair to say, look, there's a lot of folks on the left today attacking people on the right for assuming this is politically motivated. I'm not sure what else it would be. I don't know anything about the shooter. I don't know anything about the motives. I get all of that, but this is a political figure at a political event who was clearly assassinated. This is not a random act of violence walking down the street. If I'm here in New York City, if I walk home tonight and I get stabbed, in a mugging event, it's hard to say immediately that's a political sort of event. But this is clearly a political assassination, and I'm not sure why so many people on the left are saying, well, we can't jump to that conclusion. I'm pretty safe about that one, that this was politically motivated. Why else would you do this under these circumstances?
I was struck also just by the way that it looks so similar to the Thomas Crooks assassination attempt on the president, finding the rooftop, squeezing off shots from that rooftop with the vantage point. But speaking of politics, not every politician has had the best reaction to this. And I was particularly struck by Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Now, we spoke about Pritzker last week and the week before. He's a potential contender, he thinks, maybe, for the Democratic nomination in 28. But have a look at this.
I would just say it's got to stop. And I think there are people who are fomenting it in this country. I think the president's rhetoric often foments it.
Now, Mick, this was even too much for the Washington Post, which called Pritzker's a disgracefully ill-timed comment. Has he gone too far with this, and has this damaged Pritzker's campaign against Trump and the Republicans?
Yes, he's gone too far. No, it probably hasn't hurt him, I wouldn't think. Number one, from a practical standpoint, we're so far away from anybody voting. Yeah. I'm not sure they're going to care much about it. But face it, there's going to be some people who quietly to themselves are very happy that this happened. In fact, there's some people on the internet. You can go find them. They're very candid about how they are.
Oh, yeah, we've spoken about them. Yeah.
And they vote typically in Democrat primaries. So, no, I don't think it hurts J.B. Pritzker. And that's too bad. It really is. It should hurt him. When the Democrat governor of Illinois gets taken down by the Washington Post, then he's crossed the line.
Yeah. Hey, but I'll tell you what though, Mick, and it's been a really tough couple of days for everybody here. But I spent yesterday with one of my screens just with social media and all the bile pouring across it. But Connecticut young Republicans and young Democrats in Connecticut, I was quite heartened by this story. They've issued a joint statement on social media condemning the killing, saying, "We reject all forms of political violence. There is no place in our country for such acts, regardless of political disagreements." Mick, I'm kind of feeling like there's a little glimmer of hope here. What do you reckon about that?
James, thank you for mentioning that, because I saw that same statement myself, and I was like, this is good. This is what you hope that people will respond to, especially the young people. Keep in mind that Charlie Kirk that's where he made his name for himself, was in high schools and colleges, universities, and so forth. And so to have those two young groups, that young GOP, young Democrats, come out and put out a joint statement is very powerful stuff. I hope it lasts. The broad sentiment is bipartisan here. Yes, you're going to see folks on the left celebrating this. On the internet, you're going to see folks on the right calling for retribution. But I do not get the feeling that is mainstream America or even mainstream Washington, D.C. The large majority of people are hoping we can come together here and do something about political violence. I hope it lasts. It didn't last time, but maybe it's going to be different.
But I mean, it just, even if it's the mainstream, it just takes one extremist, as we've seen, because I see also that Republicans, Democrats, NBC is reporting that both Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the left and Nancy Mace on the right are ditching upcoming events, bolstering security measures. I'm really worried that in the really rough and tumble political arena of the United States, where people get out there and they're out on the streets and they're doing rallies and they're talking to people, this is going to have a real chilling effect on getting our elected representatives, getting people in public life out in the public. I'm worried about this, and that this is going to have a real chilling effect on Congress, but also across, just political life in general. What's your thoughts about this? Because you have, of course, been a chief of staff. You were Trump's chief of staff. You've been involved with planning events and security and all of these things. Where do you see this going?
I'm worried. I'm absolutely worried, and I'm worried in a very real, tangible, visceral, personal way. James, look, I know we didn't talk about this before the show, but if you did this program in the United States and you were sitting here like I am in New York City, you might think, and probably should think twice about walking home after the show. That's just that's the type of fear that we've got. Look, I know Nancy Mace, I know Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I don't know AOC as well as Nancy, but they're right to be concerned. AOC is right to be worried about a nut job on the right, taking vengeance in his or her own hands. And Nancy's worried about the entire environment, that if it can happen to Charlie, it can happen to anybody. And if it can happen to Charlie, it can happen to anybody.
Finally, I don't want to end on a dark note or a negative note, but I was a little disturbed by this here. There was a moment on the floor of Congress which was a little depressing, because Republicans want to have a moment's silence in the House, but some of the Democrats didn't like this. Have a look at this.
Let's wait a minute. The House will be in order.
Mick, I kind of feel like Congress could learn a few things from those young Democrats and young Republicans in Connecticut.
Again, you don't want to end on a dark note. Now, I am very, very enthusiastic and encouraged by what the young Republicans and young Democrats did in Connecticut, but maybe their parents and grandparents should take a couple lessons from them. Look, if you're wondering how long this sort of atmosphere of bipartisan encouragement of civil discourse is going to last, keep an eye on Congress, because if it starts to change, it'll start to change there first.
Mick Mulvaney, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us on this very somber day. Thank you very much, Mick.
Thanks, James.